Kajukenbo Deep Dive. My name is John Hoylo. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the stories and histories of the late, great Grandmaster Charles H. Gaylord. Charles Gaylord was one of the first martial artists to bring the martial art of Kajukenbo from Hawaii to the mainland in the 1960s. In fact, he was one of 5. My guest today is Great Grandmaster Melchor Chavez. Thank you for joining us, Grandmaster.
Aloha, aloha.
Aloha, thank you for coming. Like I said, we talked on the phone earlier, and there is very much a chance I will accidentally call you Professor, because when I first met you, that was the rank, and it's kind of was in my heart. So please forgive me.
As long as you don't call me late for dinner, John, it's all good. Huh?
And that is perfect. I will never call you late for dinner, but come to Japan when you're ready. I'll show you around. Grandmaster Chavez is a 10th degree black belt in the Gaylord lineage of Kajukenbo. He's also a recognized crew of Muay Thai kickboxing and a chief maestro of Derobio Eskrima. He has a school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which also has jiu-jitsu and Western boxing classes. And Grandmaster, your school's been around for 47 years, is that right?
47 years now this May. I completed 47 years of being in business. It's been a terrific run. We start our classes at age 3, and from there, John, we've been able to develop multiple world champions. We were at one time the second-rated boxing team in the entire United States. The only team that had more wins than the Chavez dojo was the Kronk's Gym in Detroit. So we've made an impact all under the Gaylord banner in the contact world, whether it is kickboxing, Muay Thai, or just regular Western style boxing. Now, I have an extensive background in the contact world, in the stand-up world. I've trained all over the world. I've taken fighters everywhere, the entire world. The only area that I haven't taken American fighters is into the Arab states, and a lot of that was due to safety reasons. Mm-hmm. We had a situation one time where I was the head coach of the United States kickboxing and Muay Thai team for almost 14 years. And I took a team to Belgium, to Brussels, Belgium. And one of my fighters was fighting, defending his world title. His name is Lawrence Miera. They used to call him the Dragon. Yeah. Very popular in Japan and very popular in Europe. Well, when we went there, we were fighting an Italian boy, and death threats started coming in against the Americans. Wow. So they were moving us from hotel to hotel. We couldn't even go to the restroom without bodyguards. So I've had opportunities to go into the United Arab Emirates, to Saudi Arabia, but due to safety reasons, I used to speak to Great Grandmaster Gaylord a lot about this, and you know, he was such a great teacher. He had such a great foresight that you know, his recommendation, I would always call him, and he would always recommend what I should do. Now, not all the time did I take his recommendation, but boy, it sure was good to have an elder there to be able to ask. At one time, I was a very blessed man because I had 3 fathers. Mm-hmm. I had 3 fathers. I had my biological daddy, I had my father-in-law, who was just like my dad, and I had Great Grandmaster Charles Gaylord. Mm-hmm. Now I've lost all 3, but at one time, I was able to go to all 3 and ask for advice. Was I a blessed man or what? You know, and Great Grandmaster Gaylord, he was the type of man that gave you advice in your everyday life, not just in your martial arts life, but in your martial arts life. There was nothing. If there was a situation that I wasn't sure, I'd make a phone call. And Great Grandmaster Gaylord was so good with me. Great Grandmaster Gaylord would not take a phone call after 8 o'clock.
Oh, really?
If it was 8 o'clock, that was his personal time. But he always picked up the phone if New Mexico called. And you know, he was that kind of a man with me. Great Grandmaster Gaylord was the best. And that being said, a lot of my success for my contact world, I had 17 world champion kickboxers, 3 world champion Muay Thai fighters, and three WBA, WBC world champion, just strikers, just boxers.
Yeah.
And all of that was due to Great Grandmaster Gaylord, because, you know, there was sometimes I would ask him even about, do you think I should take this fight? And we would talk about it. And we would decide yes or no, because it was, yes, it was coming out of Chavez dojo. Fighter was coming out of Chavez dojo, but it didn't work like that. It was always for Great Grandmaster Gaylord, because he was my teacher, and he deserves all of the accolades that go along with being the head instructor.
I believe that. I think as any coach going into a fight, what I remember finding interesting about the UFC when it first opened up is I heard rumors there were some Kaiju guys who went in, but they actually did not fly under the flag of Kajukenbo because they wanted to be respectful of their teachers. They wanted to make sure that if we're going to represent the school, it's got to be in a respectful way. And they wanted to make sure everything was done right. So was that pretty common with Grandmaster Gaylord, that you would talk with him and find out, you know, this is okay for Kajukenbo, this is something we should stay away from?
Yes, you know, John, the decisions that he made and the decisions that I make now for the KAA are never personal. They're never personal. I always tell people, look, when they call me up as a great grandmaster to give advice, I tell them sometimes, you may not like what I have to say, but what I'm going to say is always what's best for the KAA and what's best for Kajukenbo. And sometimes it's rubbed people wrong, but in the long term, they see the light and they understand. I've had them come back and tell me, you know, I couldn't see at the time why you made that decision, but now I do. And I always tell people, if you look at me, John, if you look at me, see all these wrinkles and this white hair, it's all experience.
That is, and it sounds like a very fatherly thing too. We don't trust our fathers a lot of time, and then we look back and say, God, he was right. I should have.
And see, I grew up in a very, very strict Catholic Hispanic family, and father's word was law.
Right.
And you know, Great Grandmaster Gaylord raised me as a martial artist like that. Great Grandmaster Gaylord never needed contracts, never needed anything. His word was his bond. You know, in my culture, la palabra, your hand, your word is your bond. And he was always like that. That was one of the things, to give you a little background on me, John. I didn't start training with Great Grandmaster Gaylord. I am a product of El de Cascos. I made my first degree black belt with El de Cascos. And when Sifu Al he left the United States to move to Germany, he became the martial arts czar in Germany. And nobody could open a school in Germany without Sifu de Casco's permission. Well, when Sifu Al was leaving, well, there's several schools on the West Coast that were the de Cascos method. I got a hold of Sifu Al and I asked Sifu Al, well, who am I going to train with now? Who could I train with? And he recommended go to any of the 5 that came from Hawaii. Well, I did. I first went and I trained a little bit with Great Grandmaster Joe Habuna, and I liked what he had, but it wasn't the combat-oriented style that I was coming from with Sifu Al and Mr. Sam Allred, or those are the people that I came up with. Well, I was already a black belt. I was already teaching here, and I got one of Jim Juarez's, one of Great Grandmaster Jim Juarez's black belts. His grandma lived here in Albuquerque. His name is Jeff Ortzo. And Jeff Ortzo saw my advertisement in the yellow pages, and in the back was the logo, was the yin and the yang. And he says, Kajukenbo in Albuquerque. Well, he gave me a call. I gave him a little bit of my background, and Jim Juarez says, go to Albuquerque, go train with Chavez. Well, when he came over, he told me that he was a member of the KAA and affiliated with Great Grandmaster Charles Gaylord. At that time was a professor. Mm-hmm. So I called him, I spoke with him. I told him that I was interested in more training from the true Kajukenbo 5.
Right.
And, you know, I'm a second generation mainland black belt. I didn't want to train with other mainlanders. I wanted to have the source right from Hawaii. That was my interest. So I spoke with Great Grandmaster Gaylord, John. I hope I'm not running on here.
No. We want to hear the stories. Tell us more. What happened?
All right. Well, I get a hold of Great Grandmaster Gaylord. There was no cell phones in those days. I have to use my landline. So I called Great Grandmaster Gaylord, and he says, come to Oakland. There's going to be a tournament. I want to see you compete.
Oh.
Well, I used to be one of Sifuel's top competitors. So, you know, the competition was no big deal to me. But John, I'm used to rules from New Mexico.
Right? The rules are different.
All right. So I fly to California. And he wanted to see me enter. And I said, yes, sir, I'll do that. So I entered form competition. I took first place in black belt form. So he was pleased with my technique. And he says, I would like to see you fight. I says, great, you know, that's right up my alley. You know, I've been banging all my life. So, but I didn't know California had such touchy rules. So, you know, they come on, I was fighting. I don't even know who the gentleman was. He was in the lightweight division, Oriental guy. And he comes out and he throws a kick at me and I lean back and I lean right into him. Smash! I hit him right in the face and I dropped him. I says, perfect, I got a point.
What happened?
The guy gets up and he has blood on the nose.
Yeah.
I didn't know that in California you couldn't hit each other. In New Mexico, you can't get a point unless you make contact. You got to hit the guy.
What year was this?
So, say that again.
What year was that?
This would have been about 77, I guess, something like that in there.
Yeah, California's always been a little iffy on the rules.
Something like that in there. So I ended up flattening this guy, right? He gets up, he's all stunned. I thought to myself, I got him all buzzed now, I'm going to kick the crap out of him. So referee pulls us in, he's upset with me, he says you can't hit like that. And I ended up getting disqualified.
Oh.
So I thought for sure, well, Great Grandmaster Gaylord, that's the end of it. He's not going to accept me as a student. He pulls me over to the side. He puts his arm around me and he says, I love a good ass kicking. He says, I want you to start training with me. And I says, yeah, I found a home. You know, so that was my first encounter with Great Grandmaster Gaylord. He was, you know, when I spoke with him, he was, he came across with me just as a father. Mm-hmm. Now, all the years, the biggest thing that has been the most impressive thing with Great Grandmaster Gaylord, I'm a very firm believer. When I opened up the dojo here, I told my wife, there's two types of instructors in this world. There's an instructor that teaches you from the wallet, and there's another one that teaches you from the heart. Great Grandmaster Gaylord is one of those types of teachers, or was. Great Grandmaster Gaylord trained me and my family and my students for years. He never would accept money from me. I honestly feel that when I had instructors, when I had teachers, it was my obligation to keep my teacher financially above water. Mm-hmm. With Great Grandmaster Gaylord, I would send him a check every year. I'd send him a check every single year. And he never would cash them.
Oh, really?
He never would cash the check. So I thought I was going to be a smart ass, right? I think I'm going to outslick Great Grandmaster. Oh, yeah, sure you are. So what did I do? I sent him $1,000 cash money. The following week, I got 2 registered letters. One was to Margarita, my oldest daughter, and the other one was to Angelica, my baby daughter. They were 2 $500 bonds. So I called Great Grandmaster Gaylord up and I tell him, no, Great Grandmaster, this money was for you. He says, I do what I want to with my money. Well, the story goes on, John. When Great Grandmaster Gaylord passed away, I was with him. I was the last person that was with him. And the Gaylord girls wanted me to stay in his house while we were making arrangements to because I stayed there until Great Grandmaster was buried. Mm-hmm. And when we were there, we started cleaning Great Grandmaster Gaylord's house. And I stayed in his bedroom. My wife and I stayed in his bed. And next to his bed, he had a Rolodex. And Kelly Gaylord came over and went to the Rolodex and opened the Rolodex. And there was about $15,000 worth of checks. All of my checks were all right there next to his bed. He never cashed them. He kept all of them right there next to his bed. That's the type of man that Great Grandmaster Gaylord was. Great Grandmaster Gaylord gave from the heart. Just, he couldn't give you enough. He couldn't give you. I would fly into the Oakland area to go train with him. We would train John till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning in his garage. Just train, and we would train. And he would, how are you going to change what you do from the DeCasco side to the Gaylord side? And we would mix it up, and he would love it. Being a chief maestro and eskrima and knife fighting, how could we add this stick technique into the Gaylord method? And we would put our heads together and add it up. And you know, one of the nights he told me that just, I was inspired. He told, you do know that this is the way the Kajukenbo art was put together. And I was like, wow, you know, for him to be comparing me to what they had already done, mm-hmm. since, 47 to 49, that was just wake up, But we would do things like that. Yeah, we would train for hours and hours and hours. And he never would allow me to pay him for classes. Never, ever did he ever accept a dime from me. And it just, a matter of fact, John, did you ever see his black Cadillac?
No, I did not.
Great Grandmaster had 2 vehicles, and he had a black Cadillac. One of the times we're in the garage, and we had a black belt class. And he wanted me to back up his Cadillac. So I backed up his Cadillac out of his garage. He says, how do you like the way that car runs? I says, Great Grandmaster. I says, it's a Cadillac. And he says, why don't you take it home to Albuquerque for you? You can have it.
What?
I says, no, Great Grandmaster, I can't take your car. He says, I have 2 more cars. Don't need 3 cars. He says, you can have it. I says, no, Great Grandmaster, I can't take your car. But that's the kind of man he is. Great Grandmaster Gaylord would, if he loved you with there was no strings attached. And that's the way he was with me, So when Grandmaster Ronnie Esteller called me up and told me that my father was in the hospital sick, I was on the next available plane over there. And I stayed with him day and night over there at his hospital side until he passed. But it was important because he was a very important man.
Sounds
very important man. In the martial arts world, in the Kajukenbo world, essential, absolutely essential.
So all these stories say a lot about who he was and what he's done. What would you say was the biggest impact he's had as a martial artist? Not just towards you, but towards all of us in Kajukenbo, towards people who train. What would you say was the biggest thing he's done to make the world better in the arts?
You know, John, I would say the honesty that he brought to the arts. You know, Great Grandmaster Gaylord came to you and he would tell you, he would tell you point blank, look, not all techniques are going to work for you. You have to pick the techniques that work for you and develop those skills. So Great Grandmaster Gaylord never filled you full of bullshit. Excuse the French, but that's me. But that's the way John he was. He was the type of man that didn't, you know, he didn't sugarcoat anything. If you were screwing up, people over there and tell you, you know, during class. John, I used to have issues during black belt class with people being a little bit, in my opinion, too disrespectful for a man of his rank. Mm-hmm. And I remember opening one of the black belt classes and I had told everybody, look, you know, you guys are being a little disrespectful. You know, be careful. You can't be yawning in class. If you're standing there with your hand out there, you better keep that hand out there. Don't, you know, don't, you know, you're in class. Well, John, I had just finished saying that. The Great Grandmaster comes in. I stop the class. We all bow to him. We go shake his hand. He goes and dresses out. I finish warming up the class. Well, we're in the middle of class, John, and there's a young black belt, first, second degree black belt. And he has his hand on Great Grandmaster Gaylord's teaching. Oh.
Oh, that's scary already.
John, the guy was the Yuki for about 2 hours. He absolutely got the stuffings beat out of him. Something terrible, something terrible. John, it always goes back to the teacher. If you don't teach your students to be respectful, they'll be disrespectful. And that's what Great Grandmaster Gaylord wanted to instill in his higher ranking black belts, to make sure that the younger black belts didn't act like idiots, you know, and that was one of the things that I thought was very impressive of Great Grandmaster Gaylord. He wanted it to come from the top down. And the poor young man took an ass beating, but I guarantee you that young black belt never yawned in class with any other instructor, especially with somebody of Great Grandmaster's rank. You don't do things like that, John. If you do that, expect the ass beating you're going to take, because it's coming. In Kajukenbo, it's coming, John. You can't do things like that. And that was one of the things with Great Grandmaster Gaylord. I was his security. I was in charge of Great Grandmaster security. He used to call me his little bulldog. It's not so much that I'm the bulldog, but I'm not going to take no bullshit either. I've been raised in the martial arts, John. This is the only life I know. I tell people, I can't show you how to frame a wall. I can't teach you how to do plumbing, but you give me 5 minutes and I'll teach you how to kill somebody. That's what I do. And I do it in the name of Great Grandmaster Gaylord, because Great Grandmaster Gaylord was the type of man that always wanted it to come from the top down. So that being said, with people that see this from the Kajukenbo world, you know that that's the way Chavez works. Those of you that have been around me for many years know that that's the way I work. And I do this in Great Grandmaster Gaylord's name. Every time I go to Hawaii, I go visit Great Grandmaster Gaylord. He's there at Diamond Head. And every time I have something, not too long ago before the Corona hit, I had some stuff in my heart that I needed to filter out. And I couldn't do it here. I just couldn't get the right answers. I went to Hawaii. The wife and I went to Hawaii. And I was in the water there at Diamond Head for 10 minutes. And I had the answer.
Yeah.
And I had the answer. And that's how I feel about Great Grandmaster Gaylord. His picture hangs several of his pictures hang here in the dojo. He's everywhere that I have because I owe him so much. I owe him so much. You know, I run, we have 4 Kajukenbo schools here in the New Mexico area. This is just the mother school, but we're a big school. We're a big school and we compete. We love to compete. My kids love to fight. I am in the toughest barrio in all of New Mexico. So the students that I have here are rough street kids. That's the only reason why I have so many world champion kickboxers. People tell me all the time, damn, those kids are tougher than crap. Well, yeah, they have to fight for dinner. Those kind of kids make damn good fighters because they know what it is to be hungry, to be hungry. I did have a school one time in a very rich area and I couldn't develop anything. Parents were complaining because their kids would come home with a little blood on their nose. Jesus Christ. How are you going to train Kajukenbo without little blood? You know, John, it don't work. It don't work. If you have a real Kajukenbo instructor, if there ain't blood, Sifu Al used to pitch a fit if somebody wasn't hurt every single class. Somebody had to bleed. If somebody wasn't bleeding, we were going to stay in class until somebody bled. So, you know, that's the way I was raised. So that's the way I teach. And Great Grandmaster Gaylord used to love that. Let's go back to when I met him, John. That's what sold him, is when I hit the guy and I put him down, came over, put his arm around me and says, you're my kind of guy. Because Gaylord, Great Grandmaster Gaylord is the original Kajukenbo. In the original Kajukenbo, there was no equipment. There's no, you know, in today's society, you got to wear headgear, you got to wear gloves. See, I never wore any safety equipment till I was a black belt already. And people tell me, how come? How come you never wore? Because it wasn't invented yet. It wasn't even invented. Junri hadn't invented the safety punch and the safety kick. So we just used to fight bare knuckles. That was it. And it was great. We still do it here in this dojo.
Nice.
In New Mexico, we can make a lot more contact. I think I'd get sued if I was teaching in California.
It's a very
here in New Mexico, my kids love it. They love it. If they get banged up a little bit, you know what the parents have told them? Keep your block up, son. My kind of parents.
That's how it should be.
My kind of parents.
So
it's easy, John, to be open for 47 years when you have the great parents that I have. I've had the best students and the best parents that an instructor could have. I mean, I never have any complaints. They're, you know, now during the coronavirus, John, I still have full classes.
Wow.
I'm going to open up tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the first day that I'm going to open up. The state has allowed me to do this for about a month, but it's me. I want to make sure that my students are safe. And I have a total of 7 classes. 4 of my classes are already filled. I can't bring anybody else in. So that's what kind of students and parents that I have. They're very supportive. They've been with me throughout this whole thing. What do you need, Great Grandmaster? What do you need? What can we do? My black belts, my students, and my parents have just been wonderful. I don't leave my house. It's either my daughter or my black belts that even bring my groceries to me. They don't want me because I am a high risk for this coronavirus. I have a blood disorder that's called G6PD, and my genetic doctor tells me, look, Great Grandmaster, if you get it, it's probably going to kill you. So that being said, a lot of my black belts don't even want me down here teaching. They want me to stay on the Zoom. So, you know, we've been taking a lot of precautions. I have a big dojo. John, our workout deck is 5,500 feet, and we're only going to allow 16 students at a time to come in. Now, these classes that are closed, we're having to split them up into 3 classes out of 1 because I don't want a bunch of kids in here at the same time.
Of course not. And I think if Grandmaster Gaylord were around, he would appreciate all of that. He would understand what you're doing, what you're going on. And I think when you mentioned the parents, you mentioned the respect they have for you. I think this is what Grandmaster Gaylord wanted to see as the story continued.
John, this is what he instilled in us. This is what he wanted us to do. He used to tell me, your karate class isn't just for your students, but for the parents too.
That's true.
And it's true. John, when I promote, when somebody makes their black belt, when somebody comes for their blessing in front of me, I bring the parents in and the brothers and sisters, because it's a family affair, John. Mama, daddy has to bring the child, got to pick them up, got to buy them equipment, got to take them to tournaments. It's a family affair.
It is.
John, I'll give you an example. At my house, I come from a family of 9, so it was a crowded family. My mom used to have a little entryway between the living room and the kitchen. It was made of redwood. And that was my makiwara. And I used to bang that redwood, knuckle prints all over it. And my mom used to say, "Ay, mijo, you're beating up the house over here with your Kajukenbo." When I got old enough, she made me buy her redwood and reframe that whole area where I put my knuckles in.
As a good mother.
John, that's the way it is. It's a family affair. It truly is. Maybe mom and dad never trained, but they know everything. My mama never took a step on the deck. She knew all the forms. She knew all the self-defense. They missed a side kick right there. Mama, But that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. When a student comes to a dojo now, John, I am a commercial karate school, but I'm still old school. Mm-hmm. The fastest person to ever make black belt with me has been 9 years. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to make your black belt here.
Right.
So I always tell people, because I get phone calls. Well, down the road, they guarantee me a black belt in 2 years. Yeah. You know what I tell them? Look, just come over and buy a belt, because you're going to have the same type of skill set in 2 years.
Exactly.
Save your money, because it doesn't work like that, John. So when you have these long stays for people to make their black belts, mama has to bring them, big brother has to bring them, sometimes, the tío or the tía, the abuelo, somebody has to bring them to the dojo. So that's why it is only fair when that person makes the black belt that all the family share in the blessing, because the blessing should be for everybody. And that was instilled, that was from Great Grandmaster Gaylord. He used to tell me, it's a family affair. It's tough. Mama has to bring them. Daddy has to work. And it's true. It's true.
So we're almost out of time, Grandmaster. The last thing I'd like to ask you, if Grandmaster Gaylord were to come down and you had a chance to say something to him right now, what is the message you would want to pass on to him?
Thank you, Great Grandmaster Gaylord, for instilling the positive principles of Kaju, because what I do here is because of you. And Great Grandmaster Gaylord, you've always been the best. You've always been the best. New Mexico loves you. I sure love you. You've been a great inspiration for not just us, the Chavez Dojo, but for all Kajukenbo around the world, because Great Grandmaster Charles Gaylord is the best.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for joining us today, Grandmaster Chavez. This is all the time we have today. For those of you watching at home, thank you for watching and listening. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. Stay tuned for the next episode. We are going to continue with more stories of Charles H. Gaylord. In the meantime, stay tuned. We'll see you again. Stay strong. Stay Kajukenbo strong. Mahalo.